Support for I Am Salt Lake comes from KRCL 90.9, amplifying community voices since 1979. This listener-supported music discovery station covers everything from reggae and punk rock to local grassroots activism. Listen today at 90.9 FM or online at krcl.org.
This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Kennedy Botanicals and Libsyn. We're going to be telling you more about them throughout this episode.
And before we get into this episode of I Am Salt Lake podcast, I want to thank everybody that has been sharing this podcast in your Insta stories. You know, every time I log into Instagram, I see a new post on the Insta stories and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So thank you to everybody that's been sharing it out to all your friends. And anyway, on that note, this is episode 396 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And my name's Chrissy Hollifield. And if this is your first time listening to this podcast, you may be asking yourself what it's all about. Well, this podcast is all about showcasing the awesome people in Salt Lake City, Utah. We get to talk to musicians, authors, business owners, restaurant owners, breweries, distilleries, really anyone who might have a cool story to share.
And we're recording today right in beautiful downtown Salt Lake City in our podcast studio that's located way in the back of Empire Merchandise. Empire Merchandise is located at 680 South State Street, and not only does Empire have an amazing selection of vape juice and vape accessories, but this is where you can come and purchase your very own I Am Salt Lake podcast t-shirt. So stop on in, check this place out, and maybe grab a t-shirt while you're here. And who's on the podcast today, Chrissy?
Today on the podcast, we are joined by Moses and Canyon from the local Salt Lake City band Folk Hogan, who is an amazing band, by the way.
Love these guys.
So great. This was a fun conversation that we had, and we were able to talk about their brand new album, some of their funny band tour stories, and how they sold out their upcoming show at Urban Lounge. And we're going to be getting into that in just a few minutes.
Before we get into that conversation with Moses and Canyon, I want to give love to one of our awesome sponsors, Kennedy Botanicals. Now remember, every time you support one of our show sponsors, you are directly supporting this podcast. So support the podcast by supporting our sponsors.
Did you know that CBD is now legal and can be used in all 50 states? Kennedy Botanicals is your one-stop shop for all your CBD needs.
Kennedy Botanicals offer 100% organic CBD in capsules, tinctures, pain gel roller, and they even offer CBD treats for your furry friends. I personally use CBD for my anxiety. You know, it's great. A couple of drops under your tongue, you're good for the day. And when I want to sleep really good, a couple of drops under my tongue before bed, I am sleeping like a baby.
And there's other health benefits from CBD that include depression, anxiety, epilepsy, muscle spasms, insomnia, chronic pain, Parkinson's disease, reduced inflammation, and it even helps acne.
Wow. Hey, Kennedy Botanicals is a local family-owned and operated business, and they really focus on educating you in the CBD world. They believe that educating yourself on CBD is only going to better arm you for what CBD is capable of doing.
Kennedy Botanicals provides quality CBD products at an affordable price. Go visit their website, kennedybotanicals.com, and learn more about their CBD products. Again, that website is kennedybotanicals.com.
Go support them and support the podcast. All right, and on that note, let's get into that conversation with Moses and Canyon when they came over to our podcast studio, and we got to talk about everything that Folk Hogan's been up to since the last time they've been on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. I'll start off here. I want to start off with a little bit of a story before we get to talking. We have Moses and Canyon here. So I wrote down kind of a little bit of the timeline of Folk Hogan and then you guys on the podcast. So episode 25 was the first time we had the entire band, Folk Hogan, different members than who's even in there now. I still remember it. I mean, it was, I didn't even know what I was doing with podcasting. Then episode 78, we had Moses, which that was at your like guitar shop.
Yep.
We did that, and they tore that building down.
Mm-hmm. Which is where is that same building that you had us on episode 25.
Exactly. And then episode 133, Canyon.
Yeah.
And then 157, this is a special episode, and this is why I kind of wanted to bring this up before we got into talking. So I was on hiatus with this podcast, Nick was reaching out to me. He was like, come on, we got to bring Folk Hogan back on the show. You got to bring the podcast back, even if it's just for one episode. So you guys kind of brought I Am Salt Lake back for a little bit, and which even makes it cooler because August is the 7-year anniversary of this podcast. So there's a lot of like specialness in this. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I won't include that in the podcast.
No.
Take it. I'll take a landmark.
No, it's funny because when you had us on the first time, very much we were still very bootstrapped, like figuring things out. Yeah. We had a different banjo player and a different drummer at the time. And that was super, super early in our band. And then by the second time, you were coming back and we were just about to release the second album.
How many years ago was that? Because it's been 4 years since you've had an album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2015.
Right there. Hold on one second.
Uh-oh. I broke it.
It's a very directional microphone, Canyon.
I'm just going to go into the pop.
It is
filter.
a cardio.
No, you're good. You're good.
Just talking your deep sultry voice.
But yeah, man. So it's been 4 years since you've released an album.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Weirdly, yeah.
Why did it take so long?
We've been super busy in different ways. We've been trying to accomplish all this other stuff of getting out more, doing more shows in other places.
Growing up in general.
Yeah.
I'd say we've aged quite a bit in those 4 years, and I think the music shows it.
Oh, it absolutely does. So the new album, when is that coming out? When?
August 31st.
August 31st.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it. I mean, how many tracks, the name?
Let's brag a little
What's
bit.
your favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There's so many questions. The album is called Behold, Folk Hogan. And that's how you have to say it. It has to go Behold first.
Sure.
Behold. It's like Jesus.
Dramatic pause.
Yeah, dramatic
Folk
pause.
Hogan.
So it's 10 tracks, and they vary quite a bit. There's some songs that would fit really well on our first album that are very much like kind of bar, happy, jaunty tunes.
Yeah.
And then there's dark, heavy, serious songs that would fit really well on our second album. But the difference is that the songs are just a little bit more thought out. They're a little bit more in depth. When we released the second album, I used to tell people all the time, the first album, we were figuring out how to play our instruments.
Yeah.
The second album, we had figured out how to play our instruments and we were getting used to them. And now it's like, we're still figuring out how to play our instruments 7 years later, but now we've figured out how to write music on them. So, So it seems like everything's a little bit more thought out for everything we do.
You've matured as a band. Really.
Absolutely.
Like you said, I think Canyon even mentioned that. So I wasn't going to do this, but let's do a quick history lesson of Folk Hogan for people that don't know the band, people that haven't listened to the other episodes.
Yeah.
So each of us was forged in the foundries of hell.
No, so I was asking you, Moses, when you first came in, I was like, well, how did you guys decide on the two of you? And you mentioned that the two of you were kind of the founding members of the band, or is that safe to say?
It started in May of 1999 when there was a really annoying kid at school that I could not stand, and I missed the bus, and I needed a ride home, and he lived a block away from me. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a ride home from you. And then we got in his car, and his dad, Larry, the subject of many of our songs,
but I have to tell you, I was also going home early that day from school. Because I ripped my pants from the crotch to the knee.
Like, how old were you?
14.
Yeah, we were 14.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
13, 14?
Yeah. So we got in the car. Larry didn't say anything. And Canyon, his typical self, is just yammering on and on and on and on and annoying the hell out of me. And at a certain point, he looks back and he's like, oh, I forgot to even tell you, I had to go home early today because I had to get a different pair of pants because I ripped the crotch out of my pants. And what's crazy, I don't even know how I did it. Like, I didn't do anything weird, which knowing him, he was probably trying to do high kicks or something. And Larry, silent for the previous 5 minutes, just suddenly pipes up with, I know what happened. Spontaneous erection. And I'd never heard an adult say something like that. And so I was just like, whoa.
You just thought it was
I need
cool.
to hang out with this guy.
His dad's awesome.
So then I lightened up a lot, and Kenny and I became best friends, and we started playing music together pretty much immediately. And then we moved all over the place separately. And then in 2010, August of 2010, we were both moved back to Salt Lake. And we were riding in my car one day, and he was like, hey, let's start a new band. And I was like, I don't want to play guitar and you play bass and keys. That doesn't make any sense. We've done that a million times. Let's do something different. And he was like, what kind of different? And I was like, I don't know. Get your dad's accordion and I'll get my mandolin.
And neither one of you knew how to play either one of those instruments.
No. I had played mandolin very briefly in a band called Devil's Country, but I was absolutely a beginner. And so that was as far as I thought it was going to go. And he showed up at my house 3 days later with an accordion, and we started writing music.
The funny thing is, Larry actually called me unprovoked, and he's like, "Do you want my accordion? I'm too old to pick it up anymore," because it was a 40-pound accordion. And I'm like, yes, send it my way. And it just happened to be like the day after we had that conversation.
So like fate.
Remind me, Canyon, you never even took accordion lessons, right?
No, it's just genetic memory.
Wow.
You know?
Did you just learn by watching your dad and
watching Weird Al?
I didn't even watch him that much. Larry refused to teach me music because he thought it was a terrible career path, and he was right.
Yeah.
No, I just sat on my porch and played accordion for 8 hours a day for 6 months.
Wow.
Because I worked 2 days a week maybe, and just
practice. Man,
sat
watching you rock out on the accordion, I'm like, I've never seen that before. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. His accordion now is a lot lighter, but that old accordion was 33 pounds when he first got it. And so jumping around on stage with it was like this.
Was the hardest thing.
Good
extremely laborious thing.
And then Nick, and then you have Curtis.
Curtis is our drummer. Cameron plays banjo, and Jared plays bass.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to give credit to the other people. So Nick and Jared were the next longest in the band.
Yeah,
and then
they've been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Really.
Once we had some songs down, our friend Tanner, that was a banjo player, we asked him to come jam with us, and he showed up and was like, "I thought you had a guitar player." And we were like, "Well, we did, but we fired him. So now we don't have a guitar player." And he was like, "Well, I know someone." And he called Nick, and then I worked with Jared, and Jared joined us shortly after that, and that was the beginning. And then Curtis actually, even though Curtis joined the band a little bit later, he started playing with us before our first album release even.
Okay.
Because our first drummer left the band, and we had people fill in. He did a bunch of fill-in shows for us. So he's been in the band a year longer than he's officially been in the band. So,
very cool.
And then Cameron came 9 months later, as they say.
What's the secret? You guys seem to do so well together. A lot of bands don't have that kind of luck.
Yeah.
What's the secret?
There's 6 of us.
I think there's a couple things happening, and I don't know if this is the most important, but we're kind of a socialist band. We took money out of the equation, so nobody's getting paid. The band builds like a company budget does. So there's that greed is out of the question, basically. And so after that, we're basically just brother husbands.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the resentment out of it.
Yes.
Like for most bands, you pay out after a show, everyone gets paid. And then when it comes time to record, not everyone has the money to put in or go on tour or fix the van or do anything. Not everyone has the
insurance.
So then a lot of times there's this intrinsic issue of like, oh, well, I'm the one that's paying for the recording, so I should be getting the money from the albums that we sell. And it immediately becomes this issue with everyone. And people feel like they're not getting what it's worth, what they're worth, and it gets ugly. And so when we first started, Nick was just like, I got an idea. Let's keep all the money in the band, and then none of us ever have to take money out of our pockets. And that seems like pretty intuitive, but that's so different from how bands typically work that it was like,
it's brilliant.
I'd recommend it for every band because now we're an LLC. We've been together for 10 years almost. As a band, that's kind of hard to do these days.
That's incredibly hard to do. I mean, even like the amount of personalities that you guys have all together all the time.
Yeah, I think being 6 of us, it also is a lot easier to diffuse a situation. If you're feuding with one person, there's 4 other people you can just go talk to and be like, just under your breath, upset. And everyone understands. Like, some days you just can't stand somebody for some reason, especially when you're on the road and you're together 24 hours a day. The idiosyncrasies that everyone have can really get to you.
When it was time to record this new album, I mean, you had the band funds. You didn't even have to worry about going into your own
in fact, when we were recording the second album, in the middle of recording, the engine blew up on our van.
I think I remember hearing about that.
That would have been crippling to any band. And because we had saved all our money, it was like, okay, let's buy a new engine and then we'll have the van back and continue recording. And it was fine.
I think a lot of bands can learn from that.
For sure.
It's hard to do it that way, but you need you need the dedication. Like, we do this because we love it. And that's first and foremost. That time you put in, you're not necessarily getting a financial backing
Would you
at any point. I mean, at some point.
Would you like to get to the point though where the band is paying?
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess that's
the
a
goal.
dumb question because that would seem like the goal.
Yes,
of
the
it.
concept
that is
of
a
the
dumb
career.
question.
So I think once Folk Hogan breaks, $100,000 a month, we'll start paying ourselves out.
Probably.
What was the deal with that music video? My mind
Which
went
one?
blank,
Oh, with,
or
you
it just popped in my head. Yeah,
the one
which
they signed?
one? Yeah, you guys like signed something with Warner Brothers.
Brothers?
Wasn't
Oh,
it?
yeah. So
what was that?
We are officially, we can claim this,
Yes.
and they gave us permission. We are officially a Warner Brothers band.
We are in the Warner music family.
We are in the
So
Warner
do they
Music
actually have any
family.
control of your guys' income?
That's
outside
what's
of,
cool is they don't have control over literally anything.
Yep.
They have control over nothing. So, which seems super crazy, everything you know about how record labels work.
Yeah.
This is essentially not a record label. We don't have a record deal. We signed a production music deal, which means that we sold them a couple of our songs and we got money for that sale. We get royalties for how that's used. And then outside of that, we can do anything we want. The only thing that we're beholden to whatsoever is if we get another offer from a different record label, we just have to go and say,
Yep,
beat this.
First rider
Yeah.
refusal is all they get.
And we can say no to their deal and go the other way. It makes no difference. So
And
it's
the music industry is like upside down. I mean,
Well,
not upside,
I
but
think-
like
yeah.
it's completely.
I think this is exactly,
Revolutionized.
this is them. This is a branch of Warner Brothers that's trying to figure out how to act in this modern age. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
is
and
interesting.
they're focused mostly on production music. So TV, movies, commercials, stuff like that is generally what things get used for. And
Right.
they will take the songs that we sold them and people may say, hey, we like this track, but what we want is the accordion, the drums, and the guitar. Ditch everything else. And they'll get that track and use that track that way. And doesn't matter, we still get royalties.
So did they use it like in one of those like Dawson's Creek or
It very well could
one,
happen.
one of those
Yeah.
like
We don't know what they've done with it.
horrible
And now-
WB
They're not our songs
I love
They just
anymore.
kind
shows,
of.
though.
Yeah, can
Unfortunately.
you still play those songs? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Not
okay.
only can we still play them, but we can still get ASCAP revenue from playing them live.
wow.
And they even allowed us to put our recording, not the one we did at their studio, they probably would have, but the recording that we did for our album, we put that on our album and they were just like, yeah, go for it. Like if it becomes number one on iTunes, we'll have a different conversation. But
Right.
so it was very contrary to our sort of punk rock DIY attitude to do this deal in the first place. But when they handed us a contract and it was one page and we read over it, it was like, oh, we don't even need a lawyer for this. Like this is all
It's
very
kind of a
plain.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
Pretty basic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was,
Still had a lawyer. Like
But
that.
was it? Were you nervous at all? Because I mean, a lot of times, again, back to like you said, your punk rock type roots, right? Like
Yeah.
you worry people are going to think we're selling out. People are going to judge us. Were you worried at all about that, or you knew deep down inside that hey, the contract wasn't bad?
yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate thing. We didn't, I don't think we were really concerned with what anyone thought.
Thought
We
of
just
it,
wanted
yeah.
to do
Yeah.
what's best for us.
Sure.
And it was Nick really when we were sitting down really laboring over the decision, he was like, what are we going to do with these songs otherwise? How much money are these songs going to make us otherwise? This might be an opportunity for us to have a steady income so that we don't have to go play 3-hour sets 2 nights a week and wreck our bodies and minds trying to pull that off all the time. Like this could be a little bit of supplemental income that makes it easier for us to tour.
So many people think that selling out, quote unquote, is terrible. But if it's something like that, it's
Yeah.
a good situation. It allows you guys to have a cushion
Yeah.
so that you can continue to be creative.
Yeah, everything
you
about
know?
it was an improvement.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's any way we'd have done the same thing if it was like a 360 deal and they took 50% of our merch sales and
No
they
way.
controlled. There's no way we would have signed a
Yeah.
paper like that.
Is it getting harder as you're getting older to play music, to get out and play as much as you want to even play? Because I noticed, like
Yeah.
even myself, right? Like I'm not a young spring chicken, right? Like I want to go to bed at midnight versus before I could
Yeah.
go to bed at 4 or
Putting on
5 in the
pants
morning,
and leaving
right?
the house sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, like, is it harder to even play night after night?
Yeah. I mean, last year we ran into the problem that I damaged my voice.
I remember that. Yeah,
and
yeah.
So that's been like out of nowhere. It was just like, well, how do I function now? How does my life work now if this is the new reality? So that was extremely difficult to deal with. And that's just age. It's like I don't go to bed until 1:00 every night, because if I go to bed early and get used to that and then play a show and have to get home at 2:30, I'm dead for like 2 days. I can't handle it. So yeah, it totally affects me.
I love it. I think that you love it too, though, Moses.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't do it if I didn't
I will
love it.
run my body ragged doing this until it's not an option anymore. So this is just the passion path that I've chosen, I guess.
Yeah. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Libsyn. Remember, every time you support one of our show sponsors, you are directly supporting this podcast. Hey, people hit me up all the time. They're like, Chris, I want to start a podcast. So I don't know, maybe you're thinking of starting a podcast. Maybe you have a coworker that's thinking of starting a podcast. If you or someone you know, if you're in the process of starting a podcast and you are looking for the best podcast audio host that's out there, go check out Libsyn.com. We've been using Libsyn to host this podcast for the past 7 years, and I know that I personally could not be happier. Hey, they make it super easy to set up, and they make it super easy to get your podcast routed to all the podcast players out there like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I Am Salt Lake podcast listeners, pay attention. Use the promo code Salt Lake, it's all one word, Salt Lake, and you'll get the rest of this month and all of next month free hosting at Libsyn.com. Again, promo code is Salt Lake. You'll be supporting this podcast, and you'll get yourself some free podcast hosting while you're at it. Win-win. And of course, many thanks to Libsyn for their support of this podcast. Let's get back into that conversation with Moses and Canyon when they joined us in the podcast studio to talk about everything folk Hogan. Thanks for listening. I want to talk a little bit more about the album. We just kind of brushed by it a little bit in the beginning.
That old thing.
The new album that's coming out. You have it coming out in a CD format, in an LP format, right? But the LP is a few months out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we'll probably get that in October.
My question, let's see if I can figure out how to word this. Is it harder to sell physical music like a CD versus, it seems like nowadays people just want Spotify.
Yeah.
They just want to buy it on iTunes. Yeah. And a lot of times they just want one song.
We actually debated whether or not we were even going to print physical albums for this album.
Yeah.
Because it's
more of a collector's item at this point.
It's almost a novelty, yeah.
It's crazy. We kind of feel like a lot of the people that do support us by buying albums tend to do it to support us, not necessarily because they want to buy the album, because they can get it on Spotify, or if they have Apple Music, they can get it that way.
Yep,
but
August 31st, you can get them in there.
But in general, people do that kind of stuff just to support us.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious.
Really yeah, no, it's
how
it's a valid concern. Even with the first album, we actually discussed printing USB drives, and we were like, if we print 1,000 CDs, how many years is it going to take us to sell that?
Took 5 years.
And
what about like even like I've seen some bands like a download code or something like that.
So all of our albums include a card when you open it up, and it has a little card.
It goes to show how long it's been since I've even bought music like that. I mean, we consume music differently.
That's why we included them.
To think about like what it's like from your guys' perspective now being a music creator. Because like I'm on the other end, right, where I'm just like, Spotify's great, I can find whatever I want.
Right.
But like you guys have to completely rethink everything when you want to release a song or an album. I mean, it's a whole different world than it was just like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, even the format of releasing an album is starting to become a little anachronistic. I mean, a lot of musicians are now kind of going to a point where they're releasing singles. And, every once in a while they release an album. But singles are how they are staying fresh in everyone's mind by constantly putting stuff out.
It's a weird game that we're playing. I think we're trying to keep up, but also set trends. We're trying to do new stuff, but really focusing on YouTube videos, I think, is a huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Spotify even is getting a lot of complaints lately.
You guys are getting complaints on Spotify or Spotify itself?
Spotify itself.
And I haven't heard anything about that, like just as far as
they're charging now? Dare they?
Like for premium and stuff like that. Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's no secret. There's been a lot of really big name musicians who have resisted putting their music on Spotify.
Like Tool.
Except
Garth
for not
Brooks.
now.
The Beatles.
Yeah,
right?
the Beatles weren't on for a very long time.
iTunes had T Swift totally kibosh them for a while.
Yeah. I mean,
and they had to change their entire public policy because of Taylor Swift to get her information on there. And that is why I love T Swift.
Yeah.
She changed the game for all musicians. She demanded that they paid more per listen.
That is cool.
Not just for her, but for
everyone. She wouldn't put her music on until
Yeah.
they changed their entire policy. And I think that's awesome. That's using your clout. That's just so
man.
cool.
That is cool. I actually had no idea about that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
That's a fun story to look up and then listen
Yeah.
to 1989 start to finish.
I like the Ryan Adams version.
Me too. It's so good.
Yeah.
I know that he's kind of a creep, but it's fine, I guess. I don't know.
His music's good though,
But if
man.
his
Yeah.
music's good, it's cool.
He's a Weinstein now. Everyone hates him.
So, what was like the most frustrating or hardest part about recording this new album? Any interesting stories there you care to share?
I mean, my voice was the frustrating thing for me.
Why was that? What?
Yeah, I damaged my voice last year, and
Okay, so
doing
Yes, you
vocals was just being tortured. Basically, it was extremely difficult.
Yeah, that would be really challenging. I used to sing, and I got vocal nodes, and
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't, like, you just can't. Is that what happened to you?
I didn't get nodules. I had laryngeal edema, so the swelling got so bad that they just puffed up and it wouldn't go down.
Yeah.
And then I had a partial occlusion, which is essentially the precursor to nodes.
You guys have gotten out and toured quite a bit, right? You guys have been out to like even Boston recently.
Yeah.
I know you guys did Europe, right?
Europe is next month.
Oh, Europe. Well,
Yep.
okay. So let's talk about that actually.
Yeah.
Before you're going to Europe, so all of our European listeners,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh,
Believe
please.
it or not, we actually do have some
I do
listeners
believe
over
it, yeah.
in Europe and whatnot.
We have listeners in Africa.
There you go. There you go. Big fans in Africa, right?
Apparently,
You're a big
yeah.
deal over there.
Yeah.
What's the, like, people out of state when they see you and they hear from you, you're from Salt Lake City, Utah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do people say? Because you probably blow their minds, right? Like, they don't expect to see a guy with dreadlocks,
course,
probably, and even
How many
facial
wives do you
hair,
have?
right?
Is
How many
usually the first
wives?
thing
I mean,
they say.
Yeah.
I mean, do they say anything more? I mean, I guess that's probably
Not really. I think most people understand that it's just a place.
just a place,
you know?
yeah.
You don't get haggled.
We try
Not a lot.
In general, we try not to market ourselves as like
As Salt Lake
a
City.
Salt Lake local band because we're above that. No, we're just we're trying to be timeless and perfect.
No, I got you.
No, when we go out of state, people don't know where we're from. It's not on like our shirts. They either like the music or they don't. So
It's on some of our shirts, but
Any memorable shows outside of state, out of Utah that you care to share? Any fun
Oh,
tour
man.
stories?
there's been some fantastic shows out of state.
A memorable one. Shoot,
We played this festival in Montana outside of Missoula called the Bearmouth Music Festival. And we were on the main stage right before Heartless Bastards. Is that who it was? Before we played, we went through the campground handing out stickers and pins and shot glasses and saying like, hey, we're playing at the main stage at this time. Come over, check it out. So by the time we got to the main stage, there was a much bigger crowd than there had been pretty much all day. And they fulfilled our rider, which was just a bottle of whiskey. And we went on stage and we drank the entire bottle of whiskey during our set. And
pretty big bottle, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
If it's for the entire band.
And
it's 5 gallons.
the cool thing was that it's a festival up in the mountains. And so while we were playing, there were droves of humans just coming out of the trees from the hills, like running down to catch us, and they could hear it from a ways away. And they were trying to get to us before we stopped. So
kinda
they
and
could
you were
check
watching
us out.
this happen.
Yeah, it was amazing.
kind of creepy. It was fun.
You weren't expecting it.
Bigfoot came out of the woods.
Yeah, it was very kind of Walking Dead, just like all these people at a festival high on drugs running towards the stage.
I think we should talk about it. LB, we should tell that story.
I think you should sell
This
it.
is at the same festival, and we played a great show. But at the time, there was somebody backstage that wasn't in a band
Well-
eating all the food, and how she got there was because she stole one of our backstage passes from Cameron.
From me. No, she stole it
So
me.
from you?
Yeah.
Ooh,
How,
blame Cameron.
how did that happen? Like she just randomly stole
No.
it?
This is.
Moses doesn't seem to want to share this story.
So,
It seems inappropriate, but it's hilarious.
so
How is it? Yeah.
what happened was Jared and I walked over to watch some music the night before we played. And we stopped on the crest of this hill, and there were a few other people standing there. And we stopped next to this lady, and we're watching the show, and then she looks over, and she's like, oh, hi, how are you? And I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? She's like, my name's LB. What's your name? And I was like, my name's Moses. And she goes, Moses? My husband's name is Moses. Maybe y'all could double penetrate me. And I was so shocked.
That's an interesting
Just
hello.
out of the blue.
The only thing I could think to do was to reach down and interlace my fingers with Jared's fingers and go, I'm sorry, I'm married. And she was like, you guys are married? And I just looked at Jared and he was like, yeah, we're married. And like he had his wedding ring on. I have a tattoo where my wedding ring is.
Yeah.
And so It was like, yep, we're married. And she was just like, I don't believe it. And it was like, yep, we're married. But she followed us around the rest of the night and basically tortured the band with her presence. She was just this.
Just because she wanted you to double penetrate.
No, it wasn't even that. It was just that she was just kind of insane. And it got to a point of where, like, I don't know what she was on, but she was all over the place. And she was trying to seduce any member of the band she could. And of course, no one would take her up on it.
Everyone was like, please no.
Everyone was
please.
terrified. She went after Cameron, and Cameron lied and was just like, I'm 17. And she was like, oh, okay, you stay away from you. Wow. And then at a certain point, she was like, I'm uncomfortable, and reached down in her skirt and tried to pull her panties off upward.
She gave herself away.
And then she was like, Moses, cut my panties off. And like, we're rolling on the ground laughing at this woman. So I'm like, okay. And I get my pocket knife and I grab them and I'm trying to like pull them tight so that I can cut them. And she's like, no, don't yank on them. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And finally get them off. She throws them in the fire. And then Cameron walks over and puts a marshmallow on a stick and roasts that marshmallow over top of her panties and eats it.
This is how you know that we love each other as a band, because nobody told
him that that's where the panties were burning. He didn't realize.
Oh man, I gotta hang out with you guys now.
And then, but then Canyon, at a certain point, I turned to Canyon. I was like, "We have got to get rid of this woman.
Yeah.
Like she was tormenting us. It's like a funny story to tell now, but at the time we were horrified.
And she didn't track you down like on social media or Facebook.
LB, if you're out there, please, contact us.
We'd like to make a documentary.
We want to have more nightmare fuel.
So Canyon pulled her away from us and managed to walk her out in the middle of the campground and then run back and kind of.
Okay, so what happened? I was like, "Hey, let's go listen to music," and she's like, "Okay, I love music." LB's gonna get you, and so I wandered into the main stage where all the crowd was, and then as soon as it got like super busy, ducked down and ran away.
That's kind of hilarious.
It was awesome.
That worked.
It was the safest thing, and it was actually we're always really nice. We're nice people.
Yeah, you guys are. Do you ever have that's obviously kind of a weird, borderline scary situation because people are crazy. Have you had other experiences with like crazy fans? Is that bad to ask? Should I not ask that?
No.
The easiest
They're
way
trying to get rid of it out of their memories and out of their thoughts.
The easiest way to get rid of a band stalker is to stalk them back. So if you have someone that's stalking you, just date them, and then they'll figure it out and stop hanging around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've really had anyone that was too scary that has followed us around or anything. Kenyon had a knife pulled on him and was nearly stabbed in Butte, Montana.
Oh, wow.
For what reason? You can't just say
because
that.
I was there.
Crazy guys
Butte.
on meth.
Because that's what Butte does. Yeah. That's how Butte do.
They didn't like your attitude. They didn't like your smile.
Played a great show, and I guess he thought that I was hitting on his wife or girlfriend, but I have no idea what he's talking about. Follow me outside. There's this sidewalk and a big rock embankment going down the hill. Motherfucker pulled a knife on me, and I was pretty drunk. I didn't have any reaction except for I kicked him. I kicked him down off the sidewalk and down this whole rock embankment. And then I looked at Jared and I was like, "Let's run." And he's like, "Yep." And we ran away. Like, he was probably really hurt. It was probably 50 feet of rocks. I don't know. I mean,
that's one of the downsides that you don't hear a lot about is that we're frequently around extremely inebriated people, and it doesn't always go awesome.
When they get drunk, man. People change.
I am usually those people. Yeah. It's nice. It's nice to be on the same level as our fans.
What would you... We get listeners, just to kind of change a little bit of the direction here.
Yeah.
People that are moving to Salt Lake, right? And say they want to get involved in the music scene. What direction, how would they... Where's some good first steps to find people to play music with?
The first thing I would tell anyone is go to shows at Diabolical or the Underground, little all ages places in town that are fantastic places
Beehive
to see a
Social
show.
Club would be awesome.
But twice a year, usually sometimes just once a year, Diabolical Records does a program called Bandemonium. And you show up and you write your name on a piece of paper and your contact info, and they throw that in a bucket and they stir it up. And at the end of the night, they divvy that out into groups. And you are now in a band with the rest of your group, and you have 2 weeks to come up with a 25-minute set. Now, there's no checking to see if you play an instrument or what instrument you play. So you might not play an instrument and get put with a bunch of people who know how to play instruments. You might get put with a bunch of other people who don't know how to play instruments. I mean, you have no idea. You might end up with 5 guitarists. And then it becomes like, okay, well, who thinks that they can play the drums? Who thinks that they can do this? And so then after 2 weeks, there's a show. And all these bands have their band name.
It's
and
awesome.
they do like a 2-hour show, and a bunch of these bands do these 25-minute sets, and it's extremely creative. It is such a special thing to be a part of. I think anyone should do it, whether you play an instrument or not. It's such a fantastic thing to be a part of.
And I imagine you both do you get out and play or no?
I've done it a couple times.
I've watched it. If you're too scared to do it, just go see the show.
It's a blast.
There's pure imagination running through every one of those sets.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I've seen
fascinating.
bands there that were just the standard setup of, guitar, bass, drums, and then I've seen bands that were like a hand drum and a harmonium and a harp, just
Yeah,
whatever.
I'd be like, I
It's
got
just
a
whatever.
penny whistle and a borin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take your pick.
Bandemonium is a good place
So
to start.
you
for sure.
can meet a ton of musicians that way, and those are great venues to be a part of.
and where'd you say
So
that this is at Diabolical?
that's at Diabolical Records? Yeah,
That's a great record shop.
it is. It's way
Do
cool.
you guys have is that one of your favorite venues to play, or where's a place like a favorite folk Hogan? That place is kind of small for folk Hogan.
Yeah, I
guess.
mean, there's 6 of us. We're all really tall as well.
Is that a tough question to ask on a local podcast, like a favorite local
No,
venue
I
to
mean,
play?
I love the Woodshed, but it's been gone for about 4 years. now.
Yeah, that
that's
was a good venue.
A lot of Woodshed was like our home base, and so we're still heartbroken
Right around the
over
corner
it.
from
Yeah.
here.
I don't know. Metro's been treating us pretty good since they
Metro
moved to their
and
big
Urban.
venue. It's nice.
So why Urban Lounge for your CD release?
For a couple reasons. First of all, we like to sell our own tickets for our album releases because it's a lot easier to go up to someone and say, hey, do you want to go to the CD release show? Here's a ticket. You can buy it right now for $5 than it is to go up and say, do you want to go to the CD release show? Get on our website or buy a ticket at
Go to Smith Tix.
Tix or whatever. You're going to get less of those people buying tickets.
There's that weird fiercely independentness we do.
Yeah. And so for us, it makes more sense for us to go out and sell tickets. And that's why for this,
Urban allows it, and a lot of venues in Salt Lake do not.
we would love to play a larger room, but
How many people does Urban hold? Like
400.
400. I was going to say 300 or 400 people.
Yeah,
which
They
is
just
decent.
changed their bar around. Have you been there since they moved the bar?
It's been a minute since I've been there.
So
actually.
they had like the angled triangle bar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it's against the wall, and it's awesome.
It's
a lot more
better
room.
than
Oh,
it
it's so
even
much
was
better.
before.
Yeah.
For just the general flow of everything. I
Yeah.
love that.
It's a
place.
great venue.
it is.
It sounds so good when there's bodies on the floor.
Yeah.
Because I'm always impressed.
Bodies on
You guys sell your shows out mostly,
Yeah, we
or at
try
least
to.
your release shows.
yeah,
or
our,
bigger
our
shows.
release shows. Yeah, and this
I mean,
was
what's the secret for there? Just because you're out there hustling and
Yeah.
selling it, why doesn't every band?
Absolutely.
Well, there's 6 very handsome men. It's really easy to sell when you're magic micing the fuck out of it.
well, it's really difficult to get out and bust people down to get them to play a show or come to see a show, a local show, and there's a lot of people out there that are just happy to support local bands, but there's a lot of people who, quite frankly, entertainment has changed so much in the last 10 years
Yeah.
that it's like, well, I could pay $5 and see 3 bands that I don't know, or I could pay
$10
$10 a month
for
for
Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have to go anywhere, and I can eat a tub
Unlimited
of ice cream.
entertainment.
Yeah.
It's really changed the game.
And I can drink
Oh,
so
yeah.
much that I get in trouble, except I'm not at a bar. So it's like we get it, but it can be difficult to get people out to a show sometimes. And one of the things that made Woodshed special was the fact that it was like a neighborhood bar. People didn't go there just for a show. People went there to hang out and meet new people. And it just so happened that they would have awesome bands there play, 6 nights a week.
Yep.
So
And reggae jam nights and fun DJs. There's all.
yeah.
Did you guys have a little bit of a contest amongst yourself to sell tickets? That I was curious.
Yes.
Because it always seemed like each one of you kind of had your own little angle.
I tried so hard to get the band to make a bet, and they refused to do it.
Yeah.
But I wanted the bet to be whoever sold the most tickets doesn't have to load gear for 6 months. And they were like, no, we're not going to do it.
Nope. No.
So it was just an ego contest, I think.
So who
And
sold the most tickets?
Cameron.
He works in a retail store. He also has a really big family, but he just gets out there and hustles.
He hustles.
Yeah.
Blaming it on
Cameron
his
won.
big family.
He gets out and hustles. That's the bottom.
He won by a shot, like quite a bit.
Really?
yeah, I mean, he sold like 16 tickets more than the next person,
Well,
which is pretty good. It's
pretty
but you know,
There's something cool though about being able to buy a ticket from a band, like
For sure.
directly from a band member. That's something that is
Yeah.
so unique, and you know, like I've actually never heard of a band doing it that way.
oh, really? We just,
it's really cool.
we just think that it's more personal. I mean, we try to stay as connected as possible to the community that has supported us for so long, and we feel like that's a good way to do it. You know, no band is any better than the crowd that is in front of them. So it's like we feel like we are the best band in the world because we have the best people at our shows. That's why our shows are, you know, $5 when we do album releases. We would rather have the place sold out and have a ton of people having a good time than try to make our money back from recording.
And bars probably love you because you sell a boatload of booze because
Yeah.
your fans love to drink.
Yeah,
right?
and
Most of your songs are about whiskey or
A lot of them, yeah. And I mean, this upcoming release show, Uinta is doing a special beer.
no kidding.
They're doing a bourbon baba for us, and they're making one firkin of it, so it's a half keg. We had Wasatch do it for our last show, and it was empty before the opening band went on. So it's a guarantee that we're going to sell a ton of booze.
Who's your opening band for you guys?
This year it's Mantis Jackson.
Jackson.
And it's sold out. I don't know if we
Yeah.
mentioned that. So if you're listening to this before the show, unfortunately, what about people that don't show up? You might sell a ticket or two at the door, no? Or-
Yes. So the last time we did our album release, there were a few people that ended up not being able to make it and hit us up and were like, hey, I've got these 3 tickets.
Okay.
I'll leave them at the door. But we didn't have any idea that was going to happen, so we weren't prepared to deal with it.
This
time, if that happens, if there's tickets left, we will have them at the door for people to buy so people can still get in. I have no way of guaranteeing that that's going to happen, but
If it doesn't happen, just pinball wizard it and put your ear against the wall and hear that one guitar.
so hopefully people can still get in.
Yeah, go there, camp out, maybe, maybe
Yeah.
buy a ticket.
I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, let's
Not a
camp
bad
out
idea.
for our own show just to make it look like there's a line.
just with all the gear.
That would actually
and we'll
be
dress up as Star
amazing.
Wars again. That's the best.
They're like, what are you guys here? We're here for the Folk Hogan show. We heard it's going to be amazing.
It'll be awesome. And then pull your dreadlocks back.
They don't realize it's you.
Woo, sound check at 4. Yeah.
How important is it, like, social media for bands nowadays? Do you think it's important? Like, has it really helped Folk Hogan? It seems like it has.
Absolutely. Which is kind of difficult. Like I'm not a fan of social media.
Oh, well, I know. Yeah.
And our bass player doesn't have any social media whatsoever. And so it's a necessary thing to get people
back
to
up there.
shows.
Somebody doesn't have social media?
He has Snapchat. So he's got something.
Wow,
But-
Snapchat.
But
Anyway,
that's it.
sorry. Yeah. So
No, yeah, Jared is off the grid, man.
Yeah.
He's got solar panels on his hair. It's amazing.
So it's, I don't know. The thing that we've started doing lately is we've started making all these silly little like minute-long promo videos for shows.
which I love, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
very
it's-
enjoyable.
Nick brought up a good point when we finished one once. He was like, it's so much fun to do this because we play music together all the time and we realize like, yeah, okay, like we're musicians. But then we sit down to do one of these videos and we just kind of spitball, come up with an idea and go for it.
Yep.
And Nick's like, it's nice to be reminded that we are creative people, not just musicians.
Oddly, those videos are kind of how the first album was made. Like we used to just spitball and there was a lot less pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so fun and funny, I guess.
It's like a great exercise to even keep up with. Like you said, to remind yourself that you're creative and like somehow come up with new ideas without the stress.
and
of,
Most of those videos we
having to.
did in half an hour.
Yeah. And it works really well with our band dynamic because it's a reminder that, you know, we have 6 different opinions that are not hardly ever going to be the same.
Yep.
And you have to make concessions. Someone will come up with an idea in one of these videos and it's just, and I'll in my head be like, that seems like a stupid idea, but it sounds like we're going with it. And then as soon as you see it on camera, you're like, that was brilliant. That made the whole video. And it's a great thing to have as part of the band because that happens during songs and you don't think about it as much when someone's like, I don't really like that change, or I don't really like what's going on right here in the song. Let's change this to this. It can feel like an attack when you're the songwriter because you labored over something to get it a certain way. But we have found overwhelmingly that if we're able to put multiple minds on something, the quality is going to be far better.
And also, when things do change, after about a week, you forget why it changed or what even happened. And that's one of the coolest things is I'll listen to the first album and be like, oh, I forget that I had a huge fight about wanting to keep this part. And then it's different on the album because the band said it wasn't good, and it's so much better now than I ever could have remembered.
To this day, I can remember how mad I was when everyone wanted to make a change to March of the Drunkards. And to this day, I cannot remember what the change was. So it's like they were right, clearly.
Exactly.
How do you overcome that when you really, really want something?
Alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
no.
Yeah,
if you drink the memory away, then you're just happy the next day.
It does take a lot of humility. Like there are lots of moments where someone has turned to me and just said like, that just doesn't work. And it's like in my head, it works, but you have to trust each other as well. Like we are fortunate enough to have 6 skilled people in the band, and a lot of times you need your opinion overweight.
I think trust is a good word. Yeah. You have to swallow your ego sometimes, and we're a bunch of handsome men, like I said, so there's a lot of confidence happening, but man.
But it sounds like, you respect each other's opinions so much that you will come to a consensus over...
Well, we have to, or else we never move on. So I guess
it's why they work so well together.
I know. It's really impressive. I wish more people were like you.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of bickering though, right? When you get in the van together. I mean,
surprisingly, no. Like we don't have generally when there's like an actual like disagreement between people.
It's very passive aggressive.
Yeah, it's super passive aggressive. And then there's 6 of us, so it's like, okay, looks like we're gonna split off into 2 groups. You 3 are going that way. Us 3 are going this way.
I will turn this van around if you guys don't cut it out.
And so a lot of times there's not so much an approaching the issue directly. It's just something that like no one talks about for a couple days, and then a couple days later someone will be like, or we could just be an asshole like Canyon was about that thing the other day, and then everyone's like, oh, Canyon being an asshole, and then it becomes a joke. So then we deal with it by looking at it through humor and going like, oh, okay, well, maybe that was actually kind of a funny situation as opposed to how I thought it was so very serious.
What motivates the both of you to keep creating music? Right? Like
we have to.
I don't think there's a choice.
Yeah, we have to.
But something's got to motivate you though a little bit, right? I'm sure there's days you have no motivation. How do you, do you just get out and make music, or do you just take the day off?
So there's definitely been times in the band where one of us is just not into it. 1 out of 6, it happens. And there's been times where for some of us, it's been a stretch of time where it's just like, I'm just here because I made an agreement to be here and I don't want to be here.
Yeah, I've had months where I didn't touch an instrument except for band practice.
Yeah, and it does happen.
You need that time though. You need that downtime sometimes.
But the thing that keeps us going is like, I happen to be fortunate enough that I'm in a band with 5 of the best dudes I've ever met. So it's like, okay, I might not be so into doing this right now, but at least I get to hang out with some cool guys.
In the end, I can't not do it. I can't imagine walking away and never playing music again, or singing, or standing in front of a crowd of screaming people. And
it's kind of like a limb. If it went missing, you would always be like,
oh yeah, I've got phantom accordion syndrome. Yeah.
We have a few Salt Lake City questions. I'm not sure if we asked them when you guys were on the show before. We're gonna run down the list here again. They're very standard questions. Yeah. And I expect a different answer from both of you. Maybe the same question.
We didn't team up our answers.
We didn't. No.
Shit.
If a family or friends are visiting Salt Lake City, right? Say this current weekend right now going on. Is there some place you take them and or that you like to, a little tour, the Canyon tour, the Moses tour? Where do you take people?
I think it absolutely depends on the person.
Yeah.
If you have your weird Mormon friend from St. Louis coming in, you're probably going to take him to Temple Square.
That's not your weird Mormon friend. That's your brother.
That's most of my. Thanks, Brandon. Hi, Brandon. Yeah, he'll never listen to this actually. Well, if you have your hiking friend, you're probably going to, take him to the mountains and leave him there.
Yeah, I think Provo Canyon is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Just the wildlife there, the geological formations, like it is just breathtaking there.
If Sean Blake came back, where would you take him?
The landfill is out. I'm just kidding. I'd probably take him to Adobe and then just drop him off.
Yeah, he'd probably love that, actually.
If you could change 1 or 2 things about Salt Lake City, what would you change if you could?
I mean, living in a theocracy is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
I actually read that question to Rachel and asked her, and she said the Republicans. And I thought about it, and I think that if we changed it so everyone was super liberal, it wouldn't be as fun. I think the counterculture fighting against everything around it makes Salt Lake so extreme.
It's
so
just
fun.
like the band. It's, as many ideas as you can get on something, you're more likely to have a good center point that everyone agrees on. So.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, if we got rid of this, would Salt Lake or Utah, would it be the same? Right?
No,
like,
I don't think it would.
Even
You
our
can't.
silly liquor laws, it's kind of like there's something fun about it, right? Like, oh, we better get to there, before the holiday, and we better go get in line, and we better.
And when you go out of state, it's really fun too because you're like, oh, really stoked when you're like, you can get wine at the grocery store.
Mini bottles?
Is this groceries? Am I grocerying right
No,
now? And I've
you're
got like
right,
6
you're
bottles
right.
of liquor.
What's it like to be treated like an adult? Yeah.
It's so weird to have a choice.
I like somebody watching over me and deciding for
Yeah.
me, though. What's
I mean,
right.
Well, no, that's what Jesus is for.
I would definitely change the air quality.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
It's
Good one.
It's tough because there are standard questions, answers like, and it's like, yeah, of course I want better air and better, but what about like favorite local eating spots, right? Place that you like to go eat at, one or two. I'm sure you got one or two.
Yeah, I got to throw
man.
out 2. I got to throw out Chrome Pitcher, and that's in Murray.
What is that?
Chrome Pitcher is like this cute little
Chrome
bar.
Pitcher. Okay,
Chrome
yeah,
Pitcher is
yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
And also a place I've been eating at for years and love it is Duffy's. Duffy's
Yeah.
is just around the corner, but they have such good food.
Do you ever spot Bill Murray there?
Dude, he definitely has a picture on the wall.
Yeah, they say that
We
people
still need to
see
go
him
there,
there
man.
from time
What,
to
really?
time.
They
go
Or
there?
have. People have gotten pictures with themselves with Bill Murray there because Bill Murray used to own like the Trappers or something before when they were the Trappers. Now they're the Bees or something. So he would come to Salt Lake and hang out, I guess. I don't know.
I hear he's such an ass.
He still
care.
owns
It's
it.
Bill Murray. Right?
I would totally be like, hey, excuse me. And he'd be like, sure, buddy, whatever. And I'd take a picture and he'd look all grumpy. I love that.
Wasn't there a documentary that we watched that
Yeah,
he
the
like
Bill
went
Murray.
to
It was like
parties
Bill
and
Murray
stuff?
stories, like
Yeah.
people,
Oh,
real
yeah.
life
He did
stories
that
of.
whole thing where he traveled around doing like college parties for
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
a
like
month
he
or
does
something.
like crazy stuff. He'll like go in and start washing dishes at a party at someone's house.
I love Bill Murray. God damn it.
What about you, Moses? One or two favorite local eating spots?
Bolt Cutter has become a favorite of mine. It's a little vegan place downtown. I'm not vegan, but
He had to say it.
yeah. Well, I want people
It's
that
okay
are,
if you are vegan.
I want people that are not vegan to try it anyways because it is fantastic.
What kind of food is it?
So it's a mostly Mexican food type menu. Their burritos are fantastic, but they do this buffalo cauliflower that is just it's fantastic. So Nick Passy said that he ate there for several months before he realized it was a Mexican restaurant because he only got the buffalo cauliflower.
I didn't realize I was coming into it.
Yeah. Fantastic food, though.
The Bolt Cutter, I don't think I've even been there,
It's
man.
way good. It's way good. Red Rock is also a favorite of mine because it's
right around the corner,
It's right
man.
next to where I live.
Great Sunday brunch,
Yeah.
Before we stop recording, first of all, I've had a heck of a conversation with you guys.
Aw, it's good to be back.
No, I love having you guys on. I love having you guys on the show. Is there anything that you were hoping we would talk about or mention or something you want to bring up or a shout out? Before we stop recording, is there anything? Or maybe not.
I think we're just I'm here because
Just hanging out.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
We don't really even have anything to plug.
Well-
unless you want to come see a show in Europe.
Let's talk about
I
where
kinda
people
do.
can
The
buy
The
it.
purpose is
actually.
just to be happy. I'm happy to see you.
Do you want to plug the CD, like where people can buy it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, let's
listen
plug
I mean,
and-
you can get any of our merch or our music at folkhogan.com. In fact, even though the album doesn't come out till August 31st, if you pre-order it on our website right now, you will get the digital download immediately. So you'll get the album essentially weeks early. And then when the album comes out, you will get the physical copy as well. So it just allows you to get the album earlier.
So there's a lot of people out listening to it probably right now.
Yes. We've had a tremendous amount of online sales since we posted everything. I think that was on the 1st too.
Okay.
And
done really good.
the show is sold out, but we have tickets for you guys.
Okay. Very
For
cool.
us?
Very cool. Thank you.
I'm
But
so
of
excited.
course, because we're shameless.
And
like
then
that.
obviously,
I
I
love
mean,
your
people are
shows,
going to
though.
be listening to this after the 31st. They can come to folkhogan.com.
Folkhogan.com.
You guys are on Facebook and Instagram.
Twitter.
Our music's everywhere too. We can go to Amazon if you want and get our album.
We even found bootlegged copies of our first album on eBay.
No kidding.
No
Yeah.
way.
How did what was the thought that ran your mind there?
Why? Why would someone do that?
We don't understand.
Yeah.
We've had
Is it
bootleg merch
flattering or is
sold
it just
at our shows
disappointing?
before.
It's way flattering. It's
That's
like
so cool.
Oh, we've gotten to a level where someone thinks they can make money off of us.
I've always said that
That's
we're not
cute.
actually famous until someone starts a hate website, like I hate folkhogan.com. So I'm really waiting for that to happen. So
Or what?
I'm excited.
That
You
guys
you
are
go
too
to the
nice to hate,
DI
though.
and you
That's
see
the
a Folk
problem.
Hogan T-shirt.
So I haven't seen that. I have found several of our friends' bands' shot glasses. I have Wanagani, who are now a band called Orphans Cabaret. They're fantastic. I have one of their old shot glasses that I found at Savers, I think.
What?
Yeah.
No way. That's awesome. I found a Monkey Knife Fight T-shirt at DI.
Yeah,
It was awesome. Monkey Knife Fight was the best.
They were like a performance art band here in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'd like to do. Is I'd like to shout out a lot of awesome bands.
Yeah,
Mantis Jackson, that's opening for us. I've told a lot of people this. I've seen a lot of bands that have tried to have two drummers on stage, and no one ever pulls it off, and it always is terrible. They're the only local band that I've ever seen pull that off. And they don't always have two drummers. One of their guys kind of cycles through drums, another guitar. He plays a number of instruments. But they're fantastic. We're happy to have them playing with us. Hectic Hobo, they've been our
brother
band for years and years and years, and we just absolutely love those guys. Orphans Cabaret, we love them a ton.
Dude, I got Breakfast in Silence. Got a big old crush on them lately.
Yeah.
Those guys cake.
Fantastic
ass.
band. Baby Girl is still, in my opinion,
They're good,
the greatest Salt Lake band. They're just good in every possible way. They're good people. They're good musicians. I love their stage show. Oh, love it. And Chris works at Red Rocks. So I get to see him all the time.
Chrissy has a final question that she throws out at you guys, so I'll let her throw
and I
that
want
out.
independent answers.
Yeah.
Can you leave our listeners with one piece of life advice or a motto that you live by?
Maybe I'll just quote Bukowski on this one and say I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy.
Given the struggles I've had in the last year with my voice and stuff, it's just, you got to believe in yourself no matter how hard it is and no matter how ridiculous it seems to believe in yourself sometimes. Like, it got to a point where Canyon and Jared were learning my songs and it looked like my singing days were done. But I continued to work on it, and because I had the support of my friends and family and the band, I was able to come out of it. But the bottom line is I worked my ass off. And if you want to do something, you can work your ass off. This band started as a joke. You know, like, let's start a punk band with an accordion and a mandolin.
And we're still a joke.
And we're still a joke, but it's like, it's almost taken up a third of our lives. Like, it's a big deal. It's the biggest thing in my life.
Biggest thing in my life.
And it's just come from us believing in ourselves and never being afraid to have a really good time.
Many thanks again to Moses and Canyon for joining us on this episode of the podcast. All the links mentioned in this episode can be found on our website at iamsaltlake.com/396. That's for episode 396.
And while you're on that website, dig through some of those back episodes. We've been talking to a lot of really cool people here in Salt Lake City. Hey, support for I Am Salt Lake comes from KRCL 90.9, amplifying community voices since 1979. This listener-supported music discovery station covers everything from reggae and punk rock to local grassroots activism. Listen today at 90.9 FM or right online at krcl.org.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to support our show sponsors, KRCL, Kennedy Botanicals, and Libsyn. We'll have links for all of them at our website under the show notes for this episode.
Hey, remember, you can always send us letters, postcards, packages. You know, the old-fashioned way of communication. We have a P.O. Box, P.O. Box 4412, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84110. If you send us something, we'll talk about it here on the show. You have a great week. Make sure to get out and enjoy the city, support local whenever possible, and we're going to see you next week on the next episode of I Am Salt Lake.
And good night, Grammy.